time they ever had.
Wow, that's funny.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing? I'm Bob Gray, and welcome to your city, your county. We're very pleased to have our representative for the Assembly, Assemblyman Joel Kitchens, with us today. Joel, you've got to remind me again. What district are you in?
We're the first assembly
The
district,
first
so
assembly district.
not very difficult
I
to
should remember that.
Yeah.
I should definitely remember that.
Yeah.
And we're sitting at least 6 feet apart here,
Yeah,
so we're safe that way
Yeah.
and everything. How are things going in the assembly these days?
Oh boy, it's been a hectic time, and it's just a difficult time with the pandemic and everything being so different. And we haven't, the meetings, even our floor sessions where we had one the other day, and everybody has to spread way out. Sometimes some people don't want to be there, which we're not very well equipped for that either. So the committee meetings are going to be. It's like everybody's life, I guess. It's just difficult right now, and it's not been an easy time to be there. But that's
I can imagine you have not only the two different parties warring somewhat, I
Right.
guess,
Yeah.
as well as different situations going on.
right. Yeah.
Let me ask you about the masks. Governor Evers has stated that and has come off with some statements and saying we've got to wear masks in certain areas. And the Republican Party has said, no, we don't think that's a good idea. I know you voted kind of not with the party on that, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
What are your individual thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
it's a much more complicated issue than maybe comes across, oftentimes in the media. And I'm almost reluctant to talk about it because this happened the last time with COVID stuff. Things change so quickly that I can talk to you today and tell you what
Sure.
I think, that it may be different tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you how it is today, or what
Okay.
I think.
And-
I can tell you my checking
we,
your watch here.
We should tell everybody that today is the 8th of February,
Yeah.
and things may change by later today, by the 9th, or by the 20th. We
Yeah.
don't know, but as of today.
Yeah. So a little background on it is that in state law, the governor has the ability to declare an emergency for 60 days where he doesn't have to go through the legislature to enact things. And that makes sense, because in a real emergency, you don't have time. The legislature, we move very slowly. We have to have hearings and everything else. So in an emergency, it makes sense that he would have those powers to just act unilaterally. We always have the ability to take those away at any time. We can, but that's the way the law is. Now, what has happened with COVID is that he had his initial 60 days back in the spring, and nobody argued about that. We didn't, that was fine. When that expired, he claimed that he could continue those emergency powers and have his Secretary of the Department of Health Services declare an emergency and just keep emergency powers and never have to work with us. Well, the court said, no, you can't do that. So that's when businesses opened back up and that sort of thing. Then later he declared another emergency for the masks. So the question is, does he have the ability to declare an emergency for more than one, for the same emergency twice? And that's a legal question. So what happened the other day is that my party voted to rescind those powers, which we could do at any time. But really, until the courts say either you can do that or you can't do that, the problem isn't really addressed, because what happened is, and I did vote against it, and I can get into that a little bit why I voted against it, but immediately after it was rescinded, he just declared another emergency. So until the courts say that he can't continue to declare emergencies, it's sort of a moot point. So we've been waiting for over 2 months for the Supreme Court to say whether he can do that or not. And I hope that they'll clarify that. So it's not entirely about the masks. A lot of it is just about, does he really have the legal authority to keep not working with us and just keep bypassing? There is a process where he could go through an administrative rule and work with us and figure out something on the mask. And that's what I would like to see him do. But so far he has done it this way. The reason I voted against it, while I want him to work with us and I want the Supreme Court to rule, I don't think at this point it's a good idea to get rid of it. We've had over 50 organizations, all of the medical community, said don't get rid of the order. The business community, they don't want us to get rid of it. Churches, so over 50 groups registered and said we don't want you to get rid of it. Not a single group registered and said please get rid of this. So first off, I think we have to listen to that. And then the other thing is that there has been it came to light that there's some federal money through the CARES Act that we will not be eligible for if we don't have a mask mandate. So until that's all clarified, because I can't imagine that there won't be more things coming along, that President Biden is likely to say, okay, we'll give you this money, but you have to have a mask mandate. So I don't want us to get rid of that and then miss out on all of those things as well. And I just think, honestly, at the end of the day, a mask mandate, it's not the biggest issue on earth. It's really not even enforced. There's not been a single person, as far as I know, in the state that has been fined for not wearing a mask. So I think people have gotten used to it. It's temporary, and I just didn't think it was worth us going in there to do it. Other people felt as though, oh, we can't let him get away with, ignoring the law. But the law is written in a unclear enough way that the courts have to rule on it. It's not just black and white. Nobody ever envisioned something like this, is the bottom line. So I hope that all makes sense. I know it's again, it's not just simple, do you want to wear a mask or not? It's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
So,
well, as being a former, I guess maybe you still are licensed as a veterinarian. Yeah. Obviously, you have a lot of knowledge about medicine and that sort of thing. When I hear that the legislature, your party, and specifically the Republican Party, that they're saying, gee, we're going to argue over this, but yet, there's money involved? Well then, we'll hold off on this for a little while. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Right. Try and make me feel better, please.
Well, again, I will, I voted against it, but I will defend that for most of the people anyway, it was more about the governor overstepping his bounds, and we are an equal branch of government.
Certainly.
So, he should work with us, and he has never worked with us. We have asked him on numerous occasions, write a rule on this, and because then it goes through a process where we have a committee that works on it, and we have some input on it. But he has not done that. He's just done it this way. Now, whether we could reach agreement or not, I don't know. We'll never know, I guess, as long as he just keeps doing it on his own. So it's been more of that kind of thing. And I know for the average person out there, they say, we don't want to play politics with this. Just, it's the right thing to do to wear a mask, so just wear it. And I get that. I get both sides of this. So, but my true goal would be for him to work with us, and let's work something out. And I really think that in the public, people would follow it more, and we'd have a more bipartisan approach to it if we did it together, rather than him laying down an order and then us fighting it. So it's been a frustrating
So it probably involves both sides a little bit, really. Huh?
It does, and I know that we do get the blame for a lot of things. People saying, "Oh, you guys are playing politics," but truly, he has not tried to work with us either. He's just he's worked with us as little as he possibly can. Even coming out of when the businesses were closed down, instead of working with us on a plan, which we asked him to do, to transition out of it, he just said, "Oh, I'll just declare another emergency." Well, so I'm not saying that we're blameless in this, but it goes both ways. That we're just not functioning very well together. We're not working well together.
Well, we hope both sides can kind of work out something, and
I think everybody
resolve.
hopes that. I mean, everyone I talk to says, we're just tired of all this partisan bickering. We just want you guys, it's an emergency, we just want you guys to deal with it. And I wish we could, but it's hard to separate the politics out. I just would say to people again, we get most of the blame, but it isn't all us. He's not he's not tried to work with us either. So,
well, it's good to get your opinion on both sides.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. Let's move on a little bit now to the budget. Discussion is happening and coming up on that.
Sure.
What's going to happen with the budget?
Well, fortunately, the budget looks a whole lot better than we ever anticipated. When the pandemic began, I mean, first off, before the pandemic, Wisconsin was in probably the best shape financially. Our economy was the strongest it's ever been in our history. Our unemployment rate was the lowest it had ever been. We have our rainy day fund, which we, when we have a surplus, we put some of it into that. That was the highest it had ever been in history. So our economy was really humming. Obviously, the pandemic, things shut down, and we thought we were going to be really hurt. The initial estimates were going to be that taxes were going to, our tax revenues that were coming in were going to be down 10%. So at first we were afraid we were going to have to come in and do what they call a budget repair bill, where we have to come in and take money back. Like we would have to say to the schools, hey, we told you could have this much money, but sorry, we don't have it. You have to give some back. And that would be really tough, especially like for the schools where they've got their budgets all laid out. It got a little better, so we didn't have to do that. And now the latest estimates are actually we're going to have a surplus from what we anticipated. A lot of that is probably because of the CARES Act from the federal government throwing so much money into this. And, you can argue that either way. I think our grandchildren are going to be paying for that, all the money that they have spent. But nonetheless, it has helped our budget tremendously. So our budget is not going to be that difficult. So hopefully, initially, again, we thought we were going to have to be making cuts all across the board. Education, of course, is the first one you think of because a lot of times that gets put on the chopping block. But all the other things too, the DNR, all the departments, we thought we were going to have to make cuts, and now it doesn't look like we will. So we'll have some wiggle room, so we won't have to do those drastic kind of measures. So that'll make that part of it a whole lot more pleasant. So
I haven't followed it real closely, but I know Illinois has had some real serious problems down there, particularly with the universities, and not coming up with a budget for several years. Do you feel that there's any chance that would happen up here in Wisconsin, or is that kind of their own little niche down there?
Well, Illinois, I think, is a poster child for sort of mismanagement.
Okay.
For instance, we're one of the only states that has our retirement fund fully funded. So, any state employee that retires, we have the money sitting there for them.
I remember being on the school board with you, actually.
Yeah.
And at that time they were saying, oh, no, we have to come up with a retirement fund. And we were going, well, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
But,
well, in Illinois, they owe billions and billions on that. They've just mismanaged, and they don't put the money away. They just keep spending it. So Illinois has always been a mess. So they always have problems. I don't see us having that same kind of problem. We've been more, conservative in our spending, I guess, and you can criticize that in certain areas if you like, but we've been much more careful in our management of our money, so we're actually in pretty good condition. So I don't anticipate that kind of thing happening.
That's
there are always areas. Everybody has their pet area they wish we would spend more money on. Whether it's universities or whatever. But we should be in pretty good condition. I think over the last dozen years we've been pretty careful with our spending, and we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, good. So you look at the budget is coming along and the plans are moving along for it?
Yeah, the way it works is the governor will make his budget address, I think on like the 16th, something, I'm not sure exactly, but anyway, he gives an address to us and lays out where he would like the money to go, and he confers with all his departments. They make their requests, and then it goes to the Joint Finance Committee, which is both the Senate and the Assembly, and they pick over it. And all of us as members, we can put in amendment suggestions, that we would like to see you spend more money on this. The Kewaunee County, not Kewaunee County, but Kewaunee City, the break wall there, the seawall, that was from a budget request that I had made a number of years ago. So that's the kind of thing we put in there. We'd say, hey, we'd like you to spend this much on this particular thing. So it goes through that thing. They take out a lot of stuff, put some more stuff in. Then in the end, we vote on it, and it goes back to the governor. And in Wisconsin, our governor has the most extensive veto power of any governor in the country, where he can take out, sentences and words and make it say something that wasn't really, and I'm not sure that that's always good.
Not good for either party necessarily.
Right. No matter who's, I would rather we narrow that down some, that you can take out a whole item, but you can't take out words and make it say something else. I don't think you should be able to do that. But anyway, then he goes through it after we have, and that's the final process. So the budget is probably our most important duty, in this job, and that'll start on like I said, the 16th, and then we probably will finally pass it, May or something like that. The fiscal year begins July 1st, so hopefully we have it in place by then. But I do anticipate it being a difficult process this year. I think we're going to have a tough time agreeing on things.
It must be kind of scary for you as an assemblyman to think, and I'm looking specifically at the breakwater, the break wall in Kewaunee, wondering if Do you think he'll go along with it? Do you think
Right.
it'll work? Does it get kind of frightening for you a little bit
Yeah,
sometimes?
it's it's challenging. I kind of like the process because it ends up being where you're out there twisting arms and saying, "Hey, come on, you're not allowed to make trades. That is illegal for me to say. Well, I'll support this for you if you'll support that. We can't do that. But nonetheless, if you have a good relationship with people and you can go in there and make a good case for it, you can get people on your side. And that's what with that thing. It went on for months where I would be trying to get people on board with it, and so I think I think I do well with that process in dealing with individuals and getting people making my case. So that's the challenge of politics, and that's the part that the public never sees. All they see is how we vote. They don't see what goes on behind the scenes where we're arguing and making our case for different things and all that. I think our area has done pretty well with getting a lot of those kinds of projects put in. But it's frustrating too because it happens all the time where you can put in 6 months and work hundreds of hours on something, and in the end the governor just vetoes it out. And it's happened to me too.
Yeah.
Or or whatever happens to it. So you have to. That was tough to accept at first. That you could put all that effort into it and it could just be gone.
Yeah.
So, but that's again, I mostly like that part of this job, I guess.
I bet it's fun. And you have to be a communicator. I know you've
Right.
always been a communicator.
Well, I appreciate that.
You bet.
Yeah, no, you do. I think I really do think, and in a way, it's good for me because I mostly stay down there because I'm one of the further people from Madison, so it's a solid 3-hour drive. So mostly during the week, I stay down there, and I think when you stay down there and you can socialize with people and say, hey, you want to get dinner or whatever. You build relationships, and I think it makes you much more effective at the job. If all I ever did was show up for meetings and then go home, you wouldn't really get to know people as well. So I think it's easier to be effective when you can build those relationships.
I know in the federal government, that there were times when Senator Dirksen, who was obviously a very prominent, very effective Republican, would be talking to the Democratic Speaker of the House. Do you find that you do that with the Democratic Party members as well, that you're good friends with them too?
Yeah, I do. I think that I do probably more than most people, that I have some good friends that are Democrats. I think that the perception in the public is that we never talk, the two sides. And there's certainly some of that but I do have some good friends. There are some people, I think the more extreme people in both parties that they're always so insulting to the other side that it makes it difficult to get along with them. Because I'm not one that somebody can insult me in a speech and then turn around and be friends. It's like, no, I take it a little more personally than that.
I think I would too.
It's
well,
hard. It's hard hard not to. But I have some, I have some close friends that are Democrats. So that's helpful as well.
Yeah,
So.
good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. How about COVID, as far as, and I know we've talked a little bit about it and the masks and that sort of thing. How do you see COVID generally coming along in the state? Do you think this is something that we're going to resolve in the next 3-4 months? Maybe?
Yeah. Well, the vaccination program has been slow to get started, as I think everyone probably knows. And part of that is just that it's tough for those companies to make that much vaccine that quickly, and everybody's impatient and saying, why can't they do that? It's like, this is unprecedented in history to put out this many doses of vaccine this quickly and to approve it this quickly. So a lot of it is based on that. I think that our state government, first off, in the legislature, we have no control over vaccine distribution. That's done through the Department of Health Services, which is under the exclusive control of the governor. So we do not have any say in that. Initially, Wisconsin was really slow in responding, and we were ranked as last in the Midwest as far as how quickly we were getting it out. And I was hearing it from people from our hospital in Surgeon Bay, where they contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got hundreds of doses sitting here, and they won't let us give it." But we are doing better now, so it is coming along. There's still a lot of questions as to why, our counties here, Door and Kewaunee counties, why is the amount that we're getting so much less than some other places, and it has been. And so, my office, we keep asking them and pushing them, give us answers on this. Why are we getting so much less than these other areas? So that we're working on that, but we don't have a direct say in it. So, that's one aspect of it. And I know there's some people that don't believe in vaccines, and I do believe people ought to have a choice. I don't think we should ever force people that you have to take a vaccination personally. But I believe in it. I'm going to be there, you know, and as a veterinarian, I gave probably hundreds of thousands of doses of vaccine. And
To horses and
cows,
cows.
right? Yeah. So, you know, I know that they work, and I'll be first in line as soon as I'm eligible. But but I do think that freedom is important. I think there are people that don't trust it, at least initially, and want to wait, and that's fine. I think as long as most people get vaccinated, we should be able to do well with it. I will say too that Wisconsin, we peaked early on. October, we were worst in the country with cases, but it has since moved to other places. Now we're actually one of the best. We're, you know, we're not getting a lot of cases in Wisconsin right now. I think we're down. Most days we've been down below 1,000 cases a day, whereas at our peak we were over 9,000 cases a day. So we are doing better here. I think that's one of the lessons of this virus too, is that it's going to go everywhere, and you know we can. It's important for government to respond to it, but it doesn't care about red states or blue states. You know, for a while everybody was saying, "Oh, you should be like California; they're not having a problem." Well, now they're the worst. You know, it's just it's made its rounds everywhere, and it's probably climate and a lot of other factors that that affect the spread. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling here. I'm not even sure where the question went.
That's it's always good to hear different people's opinions, and I appreciate that.
Well, and it has helped me having a veterinary background, and I think having a better understanding of medicine and viruses than probably most people have. So that's been helpful for me in dealing with this.
Yeah.
One of the important parts, I think, of COVID has been education. And you and I were on the school board together, so I know that we both obviously feel very strongly about the importance of educating young people.
Sure.
And I really, really worry that there are so many kids that virtual learning is not going to work very well for them. And unfortunately, the places that have not opened up have been in our biggest cities, where we already have the biggest achievement gaps between rich and poor. And so I truly worry that we're going to be paying a price for that for a long time, because we know that if kids don't learn to read by the time they're in fourth grade, if they've already fallen behind, the odds of them ever catching up are not very good. And if they don't catch up, they're not going to, they don't graduate from high school, they end up in prison or in a lot of bad outcomes. So I do worry a lot about that. And I think that when school opened this, I understand in the spring when it was first going around, we didn't know what the virus was going to do. So most of the schools shut down, and that was probably the smart thing to do. And even in the fall, excuse me.
Sure.
Even in the fall, we didn't really have a good handle on it. So a lot of schools were being pretty cautious about how do we reopen. We don't know if it's going to spread like crazy. At this point, we know that it does not spread very much at all in schools. And Dr. Fauci has said the school should reopen. He says it's the safest place for kids to be. So I do think at this point we need to get all of our schools open. I know in Kewaunee County, our schools here have pretty much stayed open. I mean, they'll have rough patches where all of a sudden a couple of teachers have to quarantine, and they, so they have to shut those classes down or whatever. So that's understandable. But in general, I think that at this point we need to be open as much as we can. And if there are parents that aren't comfortable with that, most of our schools, I think most all of our schools, offer an option where, okay, if you're not comfortable sending your kid to school, we'll get that material to them. But for a lot of families, if there's not somebody at home helping that kid, virtual learning is just not going to work very well.
Do you foresee any possibility that these kids who have missed, being in school, learning all of the material that they should be learning, that maybe we're going to have to make up a little bit of that along the way? Maybe we'll have to give some of those kids a little bit more emphasis on learning English, learning to read, learning about history, learning about science, that we may have to come back and review a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure that's going to be necessary in a lot of cases. Unfortunately, though, what we see too often is if kids fall behind, they just give up and they drop out.
Yeah.
And there's always that controversy even with flunking kids in classes, and you hear a lot of people that aren't involved in education say, "Oh, well, if they're not up to the grade level, you should just fail them and bring them back the next year." That sounds good in theory, but in practice, when you do that, very often that kid's going to drop out.
And it's very psychologically difficult,
Right.
you know, for a child to say, "Oh, you flunked that grade.
Right.
Come on back and try it again." Oh,
Right.
man.
Yeah, it is tough on those kids. So oftentimes what happens is they just give up and leave school. So it's not as simple, like a lot of things, not as simple as it might seem on the surface. I do think that I'm certain that, especially in those bigger districts, they're going to try to put a lot of emphasis on getting those kids caught up. But, you know, it is tough once they fall behind. And even brain development, those young brains, when they're still growing, if kids aren't stimulated like they should be, they never, their brain doesn't develop as it should. And, you know, a scary thing is that they can do CAT scans on children's brains. And if a kid is like 5 years old and no one has ever read a book to them, they can see physically that brain has not reached the same stage as a kid that was read to. So that's where you realize that we can't expect to catch them all up later, because if they fall behind early, you know, from the psychological standpoint, but as well as just brain development, they may never catch up. So
I remember going in my situation, going to a large high school where I was from, and being a freshman and being absolutely lost, not knowing how to study, not knowing how to do all of these things. And fortunately, I had some really good support from teachers who were willing to get behind me and say, "Come on, you can do this." And my parents were strong supporters. The deans in the, you know, which would be the equivalent of a principal or whatever, got behind me and said, "Come on, you can do this." But boy, without that kind of help, I don't know where I would have been.
And that's exactly right. And I think that they've done research on that. And the more a kid has adults that care about them, whether it's parents or teachers or ministers or whatever, that the greater the chance those kids are going to succeed. So that is a really important thing. And I think that's an advantage we have in our area here with the small schools that we have, that I think it's more likely that a kid will build a relationship with a teacher and feel like that teacher really cares about me, you know, than if you're at a big school. It's tougher. So fortunately for you that you found those anyway, but there are those kids that just go through school and nobody ever much notices them.
Yeah.
And if that happens, it's tough. It's tough for those kids to do well.
It is. Well, we hope that they come along. One final kind of category, and I don't want to make this too political, but with the situation in Washington, with the impeachment, with a new president, with different Congress, with a different Senate, and so on, do you find that that's affected your situation here and the parties and so on?
Yeah, it's been very divisive, certainly divisive within the Republican Party. You know, there were some things in Wisconsin with the elections that I think we need to look at. I mean, just to throw out a couple, there's where a person can claim that they're indefinitely confined, and then they don't have to go through the voter ID; they can just get a mail-in ballot. During the pandemic, and what happened was in Madison and Milwaukee, they were telling people, "Oh, if you want to, you can just claim you're indefinitely confined, and we'll send you a ballot." That really wasn't legal, and the courts finally told them not to. And then there was in Milwaukee where they did not allow election observers, Republican election observers, to get close enough to see what was going on. That's illegal as well. So there were things that went on. Now, none of that proves that there was fraud. It just creates an atmosphere where fraud is possible. So there were people, obviously, a fair amount of people in my party that believed that there was fraud and that President Trump actually won. Well, again, there was an atmosphere where there was fraud that was possible, but there's no proof that there was fraud. So that's been really divisive within my party, that you know, that people, there was a lot of misinformation where people thought, "Oh, you should just invalidate this election," telling us in the legislature. We don't have that authority. We can't do that. And you know, so I think that we need to, what I'm telling the people that are of that mindset, look, we'll try to fix some of those things so you can have more faith in the next election and feel like have more confidence that when you vote that there aren't people cheating out there. We want to do those things. But the past election, it's over. You know, we're not gonna go back and change that election. But we will try to. We want people to have confidence because, you know, of course, voting is our most precious right, and people need to know that when they vote that that it counts and that there aren't other people canceling out their vote and that kind of thing illegally. So it's been a difficult thing, but and it's not good for the country to have people really doubting whether, again, our most fundamental freedom, whether it's valid or not. And so I hope that we can get past that. I think it's going to be a real challenge. It is not good for the country when you have people questioning whether President Biden is, you know, won fairly, and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, so anyway, that it is difficult. It's been very challenging.
You must kind of cringe when you have to go places sometimes.
Well, yeah, and after the election, I mean, we got on the day that they certified the election, January 6th in Washington. Just that day, by 5 o'clock, I had gotten over 5,000 emails.
Oh my goodness!
From people saying, "Oh, you need to stop this. You need," and it's like, first off, we never had that power. I really think that some of the problem in Washington was people were led to believe that there was a way that it could be stopped, but there wasn't. There was no legal way to do that. The vice president couldn't do it. Congress couldn't do that. So people were misled to think that that there was still a way that this was going to change, but it really wasn't. There really wasn't a method. So so anyway, yeah, and here I'm on the state level. I know with, you know, Congressman Gallagher, he's caught way more grief about this.
I would imagine being kind of, you know, state and, you know, being
I mean, and he was thrown right in the middle of it. It was just a very, very difficult situation, and it still is. And you know, I'm fortunately, I think most of the people I'm talking to now are looking forward and saying, well, we want to make sure in the future it's better, but we're going to they're letting that go a little bit. So I hope that, you know, we can do that.
And we've never really faced this type of situation. Well, maybe in 1919 or 1918, they perhaps did a little bit with when they had the what they called the Spanish flu.
Right.
But we've never really had a COVID, you know, emergency like this, and hopefully, as we go along, we learn things.
Right.
And hopefully, we'll be doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, the number of people that voted absentee, you know, skyrocketed, of course, with the pandemic, and that created a lot of this feeling from people that there are people cheating and all that. And it was, you know, it was just difficult in 1,000 different ways.
You bet.
It was just sort of a perfect storm of all these things coming together, and so.
Well, we want to thank you for your honesty, for your discussing all kinds of topics, maybe some of them not real pleasant.
Well, no, there are lots of controversy right now.
Okay,
So,
all right.
yeah.
Next time we hope it'll be a little calmer.
Yeah, I hope so.
But, we want to thank you, Joel, so much.
Always a pleasure talking
Thank
about
you.
it. Thanks.
My good friend, Joel Kitchens, who is the assemblyman from the 1st Assembly District. I remembered this time. That's going to do it for our program today. This has been recorded, just in case you're wondering, on the 8th of February, 2021. That's going to do it for our show today for your city, your county. We thank you so much for being with us. I'm Bob Gray, and hope you'll stop by and see us next time. Take care, everybody. So long.
Well, I think they have the microphone closed off that way.
Yeah, I hope I didn't.